Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Scream and Rant and Rave Central, also known as the BMW Boxworks, and this is a little video about Goop again. Now, this is a final drive from an R80 ST. It's one of those final drives that when BMW were thinking about some of the things they were doing to make a monolever shock, they did some amazingly strange things. One of them actually was, instead of having a tube that runs through from one side of the final drive to the other, they put two short brass tubes in there and put a bunch of O-rings on the brake cam, which would categorically be one of the silliest things I've ever seen done. Inevitably they wear and then they leak. This one isn't actually worn, and I think the O-rings will actually probably take it up. If not, we have to get a sleeve made and reamed out to the right size. Possibly bore the two holes on the case slightly oversized to get some wall thickness, depends on the day, and we can then put a proper tube in there that will work. Why am I ranting and raving? Well, when you bring a thing into a shop, and when I rant and rave and people think it's hilarious about silicons and glues, on this same bike we had no oil feed on the two front top rockers. One was worse than the other, one was almost zero, and a blob of black silicon crap came out of the hole when we went to flush it, and some slimy looking goo came out of the other side. Not real sure what that was. The gearbox is a shambles, and it's a good bike actually, but it's just well worn, and it's worn well, and we're just bringing it back to life for the owner who loves it dearly. And the final drive bearings, the output bearings, have had a considerable amount of play in them. I've got the bearings here to put in. And I've started stripping it down and prepping it, because that takes a lot longer than just about anything else on the bike. It's not so much this area here where the wheel runs, but in here where the seal runs, that's not finished yet, but it needs more for my money. But you've got to take your time and prep it properly and clean it thoroughly and get it all nice and tidy, and I want to get that old bearing out of there. That can be a mission on a good day. Sometimes they come out easily, sometimes they fight. That one I'm hoping will be all right. But then we got the seal down here, which when I sort of talk about strip threads, now these are the threads that everybody strips. Like, so this one here would be this is the top, so this would be the filler plug for the drive shaft, right? And this one over here would be the drain plug for the drive shaft. They're coarse thread, and as you see, if you count them, there's 2, 4, about 6 threads per side, and this seal ring goes in once the seal's replaced and I finish cleaning that up, but I'll come to that in a minute. And it goes into these threaded rings here, see, and blocks up this hole and this hole. So the nuts have got a 17mm head on them and only 6 1.5 pitch threads holding them into the alloy. And people get on the end of their spanners and they swing and swing and swing and pull the threads out in a heartbeat. Then they wrap plumber's tape around it, or then they put silicone on it and fit it back in and glue it in place. Or sometimes they bring them here. I've at different times made a different bung for them, or had made, I didn't have the machine to do it, and put a bigger thread in there to get a solid material. I've fitted, I don't know how many helicoils into them. It's a regular occurrence, these and sump bolts. So to do this job, these ones are okay, incidentally, but to do this job you have to take the seal ring out. That's the seal ring right there. To take that out, you've got to take the pinion nut off. There's a big spring washer thing inside there. And then you take this spherical drive spline off. Now, I got into trouble for being something with somebody the other day about being cavalier about what they know and don't know. I wasn't. The reason, this is a self-aligning spline. So see how it's curved? It goes onto this spline here. Very hard to do with the camera, but it fits up on there and pushes down, and it tensions the inside of the radial axial bearing that goes in there and makes, it's a 2-piece bearing, and it makes the big pinion bearing. And then on this side here, in there's a needle roller bearing that supports the nose on the end of this pinion. They get tremendous force put on those things. And in the crown wheel department, it's the same. There's the nose of the crown wheel output section, which has got the wheel studs on it, goes down in there. There's a preload in there for back shimming, or backlash I should say. And then on the other end of it, behind the big bearing, which I just don't know where I put that right now, but the crown wheel is here. I've stripped it and prepped it ready to go, and the big bearing goes down there on that shaft there, right? And it takes the load, the lateral sideways load from the wheel, and takes the place of the axle on the old twin shocks. So naively, I know that these things often have some red Loctite on them, sometimes they have green Loctite on them, and I started the process. You use this little collet here, which is just made out of the bell on an old drive shaft, and you put it in there and lock it on with those bolts, and then that locks the crown wheel up via the pinion up via the spherical bearing, and you can get on there and take that off, or so I thought. Eventually I did get it off with heat and blue words and lots of prayers and stuff, and it is clean now, but it was full of this black stuff. It's not silicon, I don't know what it is. It smells to high heaven, and it has the consistency of sort of bitumen, like dry bitumen, and it was in everything. Unfortunately I washed most of it away before I started doing this video, but like here, it's still in the teeth of that. See it? It's just horrendous shit. I don't know what it is, but it was down in this thread here. Now that bearing carrier also preloads and holds tight the outer race of that pinion bearing. It goes in there and pushes it in. It's preloaded down to, I forget now, I think it's 120, 140 foot-pounds, something like that. The one on this side might be 140 and this might be 90, I think. I always have to look those things up. I've got no head at all for that sort of stuff. But to get that off, first of all, was a mission. And then for a while there, I thought I was never going to get this spherical spline drive out, because the idiot that put it together filled it up with more of this same brown bitumen stuff. And the only way you can prise it off is to get a couple of flat bars in there and get in behind the thing through these holes, which is very easy to damage the thread, and try and lever it out, unless you've got some kind of pincers or other. So what I use is these are, I went around the op shops and bought these old screwdrivers years ago, and I lineaged them down so they got a flat surface on them, rounded tips. That one particular one there, if it could talk, it wouldn't talk to any of us. When we can't get a sump off, that's thin enough, can't get it there, to go into the material of the sump gasket, and because it's flat you can give it a couple of light taps and go around and actually split the gasket if you can't get it off any other way. So this one is just a smaller version of the same thing. You'll see it's also got a flat machined on it, and those are the things I put in through those holes so that they won't ding the threads. They're nice and flat, and if you just work them gently and work painstakingly, patiently, you will eventually get that thing off. Although in all the years I've been doing it, this one was the worst. It took me over an hour to get that off without damaging anything. And this recess here was full of this black rubberized bitumen. It's not silicon. When you grab it, it comes off and crumbles in your fingers, just falls away. So I had little brass wheels in there cleaning out those splines, and this patented tool here, another one of my patented tools. Where is it? Can't find it. There it is, there somewhere. There, look, there. So that's another little cheap screwdriver that I got from, I think, Aldi. And I bent it, and I'm trying to make it come into focus. There you go, sort of. No, can't get it to go. It's round on the end, and it's got no scratches in it, but it just fits in there, like that, and it will chase a thread for you. Now I do have a thread chasing tool. It's an old seal holder with a series of slots in it. There was so much goo in there I couldn't even get it started to clean the threads out. So I had to clean the first 3 or 4 threads with that little screwdriver and some solvent, painstakingly cleaning it away until I eventually got the thread chaser in there, and I was able to clean that up. Now while you're doing that, you've got to be super careful, because even though that's got a shield on it, it's an open bearing. It's a big bearing. And it's a bloody expensive bearing, so you don't want to be wrecking that. I had that packed up with a rag, started, then I got the thread chaser in, then I gradually worked it out, and eventually I got it clean. The purpose of the rant? Well, If you are going to rebuild one of these, you'll need two things. To do the seal on the input shaft here, you need a seal. There's one in there. They go in back to front. Right, they go in back to front. So this one, this is the side that faces into the diff. Okay? And then to stop the oil from getting down the pinion shaft through the splines and transferring itself into the final drive, they have a little seal. Here it is here. Now all the tightwads in the world will say, oh, that's too dear. They aren't real cheap. They're $8 or $10 or something stupid like that. And it fits in there. Slightly proud of the cog. But when you put the flat washer against it and tighten the nut up, it makes an oil tight seal. Now they crumble away every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. About seal time really, but I guarantee you that some of them haven't been taken out of their bikes since Adam was playing fullback for Jerusalem East, you know. It's just been a long time since a lot of these have been touched, and when people get them out, they fill the splines up with silicone, with goo, with anything, and this black stuff that I've never seen before. It took ages, hours to clean that off, this spline and that thread. Hours and hours. Somebody's paying for that. Then I can't, my conscience won't let me charge the customer the right amount of money because I put it down to my own stupidity at not knowing a better way to clean it quicker. If you're working on these bikes, spend the hours prepping, not gooing. Then when you or the next person comes near the bike and has to work on it for the next owner or for you when you don't want to do it anymore, at least they'll be able to get a start on the thing. That's all I've got to rant about for today. Stay well, ride safely, until we meet again.